I wasn't fixing my postnatal depression. I was healing my relationship to myself.
Hello, and welcome to the Philosophy Podcast, where we get to explore the art of intuitive healing and holistic leadership. I'm your host, Fiona Finley, the professional chatterbox, business mentor, nervous system nerve nerd, and forever student of what it means to find true freedom in life. This podcast isn't here to give you all the answers. It's here to remind you that you already have them. Philosophy is my flavour of wisdom, and I'm here to share my story just so that you know that you're not doing this alone. With everything that I offer, I invite you to take what you need and leave what you don't, and let whatever resonate land in your body of wisdom. This space is for exploration, transformation, and discovering what true freedom really feels like and looks like for you. So let's dive in.
Welcome to the third episode of this series of postnatal depression. Now, I'm not saying that I'll never talk about it again, because I probably will when things pop up and I think that I'm called to share my insight. This episode, we're building on the first two. The first one is around the grief, the transition into motherhood. Postnatal depression and diagnoses and disorders are thrown around like that lolly candies. And then we get to identify with them, yay, and then we say there's something wrong with us when there's not. It's transition and it's evolutionary. So the first episode was a lot about the evolution into that grief period. You can feel like a mess and you feel like, nothing is working and still love your baby. You can miss your old life and still love your baby and still love being a mother. So that was the first one. The second one was around the nervous system and how co-regulation is just the secret sauce to motherhood, because we've all got a nervous system, and if you're calm, then your baby's calm. So I explained a little bit about how to find the calm amidst the chaos. Now, this one is not just looking at issues, but it's more about the place where you come from and you make those decisions and you take action on to do what? Who are you serving? Are you serving your baby? Are you serving your partner? Are you serving society? Are you serving yourself? Are you serving God? Whatever the thing is. When it comes to values, it's really important for you to not just have a rough idea about them, but also know what's important to you and how you're actually fueling them. So I'm going to take you back. It'll be about a decade ago. Let me tell you, days are long and the years are short. So about a decade ago, new mum, 2 weeks postpartum, saw cesarean, very fresh, and walking my baby and my dog. And the dog does a poo. I have a poo bag for once. And the child just starts screaming through his blanket in the pram. And people were walking past and it felt like everybody's eyeballs were on me. I had so much shame, so much guilt, so much anxiety of being the right citizen and a good citizen by picking up the poo and attending to my baby and looking like I've got it all together. I got this. I can handle this. I can easily breastfeed. Those retractable fangs do not hurt my boobs at all. Very confident. No, I was not confident. I was not confident in breastfeeding in public. I was not confident in my mothering skills. I was not confident even just bending down, picking up a poop because of my physical pain. And the thing that I noticed, so with all that, I did it. But the thing that I noticed was I was more concerned about how I looked and how I could have been perceived as a bad mum, like the perception of a bad mum, perceived as a non-abiding citizen if I hadn't picked up the poo, and all these things, right? So all these cares in the world, these were my big cares, and I could not for the life of me understand what it was. Thank you to my therapist, who is going on 10 years now. She deserves long service leave. When I spoke with her about this, because it happened a lot, it felt fake, false, and unfulfilling. And that was the thing. I started to feel this unfulfillment a lot. And then the postnatal depression diagnosis was kind of thrown around. The lovely thing about my therapist, we didn't talk about it. We didn't talk about and identify with that postnatal depression. What we talked about was around the transition and the grief. Then she explained around the nervous system. And then it came to this other point where I feel It's not just in motherhood, it's in the way you do your business, it's your leadership, it's the way you are as a person, it's the way you are as a friend, and how you are as a human being. And it comes down to values. How are you interacting with the world as a human and fueling your values? Because when you understand what those values are, then you can see how you're fueling them, and then that is what creates fulfillment. And sometimes you don't need to identify them as such, but if they're being fed, then you're going to feel fulfillment, you're going to feel peace, you're going to feel a vitality around life, and like you have this buffer bucket and you can take on the world and all of its challenges because you are a filled up human being with all your cups are full. I don't think that was very articulate, but we'll run with that. The thing with those values is, one, they always change, because as you start to experience the world, they actually get deeper and deeper. And when you're a parent, I found it was a lot of trying to appease people. So, self-confessed people pleaser in recovery, and needs training wheels every now and then because she falls. So, when I was a parent, that moment when I wanted to appease everyone on that walking path, if I had have scaled it back and understood my values, then none of those conversations would have landed so deeply in my head, and all those caring about the externalities. And the way I parented initially was very much by the book. It was by someone else's script. And my parents were really supportive. And the thing is, they said, "But you get to parent the way you want to parent. We're just here as support." And I was like, yeah. What does that mean? I don't know what I want to do with this squishy. I don't know what that means. What it was that I needed to understand myself better. And motherhood really calls to that, because you can't lead anybody else. And this goes for if you have a business, if you're in a leadership position or working, you can't lead anybody else unless you lead yourself and know yourself. And I thought I knew myself. Well, having a baby completely threw that on its head. And I had to revisit that, because that was a constant scenario of that feeling of shame and the need for self-protection against the fact that I felt like I was failing, because I was parenting and taking action to appease all these other stakeholders that were not me. They weren't me. They weren't my values. They weren't my inner voice. It was purely for external validation. I felt like I was in a pressure cooker, and I needed to get some relief. And to do that, I thought, well, if people think I'm a good person or a good mother, then, phew, I can let off some steam and continue on. It doesn't matter. It didn't matter. It didn't matter what people thought, because at the end of the day, I was still feeling that disconnect from parenting. I felt a disconnect from myself, and therefore I felt a disconnect from my baby. And postnatal depression really does circle around that disconnection from your baby. What if you are connected, you just can't feel it because you're disconnected from yourself? So what does that mean? You need to start to heal your relationship to yourself. And the best way to do it is to understand your why. So in business, I talk about, you want to start a business. What's your why? Because that's your intrinsic motivator. Let's identify it. Let's play with it. Let's flesh it out. Same thing as parenthood. What is your why? Why do you get up and do those things? Why do you like experiencing that type of exercise? Or why do you like having those deep conversations? That is your why. For anyone that works with me, you know that I like to talk around those 4 A's. So basically, it's an awareness. That's your first stage. And then you get to architect something. You start to plan and you dive deep in why you're doing what you're doing. And then you get to action something, and then you get to reassess, and you get to pivot, you get to go forth and things. And it's this cycle: awareness, architect, action, assess, all the time. And it's the same if you're birthing a business. It's the same if you're leading a team. It's the same if you're navigating a hard relationship. And it's the same when you're a mother and you're parenting a child. So when it came to understanding my values, I really needed to break it down and just to take a break because I realized something had to change, and that was my awareness. How did I do it? Well, the first was identifying my values. So let's just play with this for a little bit. Ask yourself, what actually matters to me? Just have a think about what's really important to you. If money wasn't an issue and you had your house sorted and all that, none of the material stuff matters. What's important to you? And this ranges from person to person. I like to get a values list, and it's just like lots of words on there. And I get to read it, and then some will stand out more, some will bore me, some just don't land. So then I start sifting through, and then it's good to look at 3 to 5 values only, because any more than that, it gets a little bit diluted in the potency of it. And it's unnecessary. It's like a level of complexity that you don't need. You don't need to have more than 5. I like to have 3 because otherwise I feel very fragmented. And that way I can really concentrate my energy and its potency in those 3. So my 3 values, when I look at those sheets and when I really sit with it, because I have to be in a very quiet space to do this, is connection, fulfillment, and freedom. Now, I looked at all sorts of values in the past, and it was health, it was authenticity, it was integrity. But when I looked at, for example, freedom, this is a very deeply evolved value of mine. It never used to be because I thought, yeah, we're all free. But for me now to have that sense of freedom, I am authentic. I do have my health and I feel safe to express. So that to me is my freedom. Just have a look at those values lists if you like. It's interesting to check it out and just to think, oh, maybe that is mine. Oh no, what about that? And see whose value it is. That was the other part of the exercise that I really felt was something that I missed. It's like, I don't even think these are my values because it was fitness, sleep. I don't remember my old values, love, passion. They weren't my values. That was what I thought people wanted me to have. So going in deep and really seeing what makes you tick and what lights up your soul is so important. And when you get those values, then you can start to unpack it and say, well, what activity helps me fuel those values? So looking at motherhood, connection, right? I needed to feel connected. And that's why I wasn't feeling really good about parenthood or motherhood and feeling sad about it, is because that connection value of mine wasn't being fed, it wasn't being fueled, and it wasn't being identified. And once I was able to identify it and flick the switch on it, then I started to feel a lot more joy and fulfillment. Fulfillment's a funny word, isn't it? Because we all have different things. I'm not going to go into it. That'll go for another podcast probably. But fulfillment's another funny thing. So it's all very personal and unique. Because what I'd found is that I was performing in motherhood. That's not fulfilling. I wasn't feeling it. I was copying what good mums did, not what this mum did. So I blame social media for that and Disney. I was feeling exhausted and I felt guilty by wanting joy because, like, why aren't I feeling joy in this? I was feeling so guilty around not having that experience of motherhood. So when I was able to identify these things, then I was able to start making a change towards my action. And the way I parent is very, very different to the way I originally started to parent, which was very clumsy. God love that little Fiona 10 years ago. She was trying her best. So what does architecting and actioning look like? Well, I think I mentioned it in the last podcast around how we co-slept. So I architected that. I looked at how am I going to make this work for me and my baby? And is it unconventional? Who cares? Is it working? Is it healthy? Is it functional? Is it fueling my values? Yes, it is. So it deepened our connection and it gave me a sense of fulfillment. And am I honoring that freedom? Yes. So our co-sleeping arrangement really did tick all three of those values. When I parent, to me, it's important to have eye contact, a heart-to-heart connection, and for me to regulate my nervous system so that he can regulate his own nervous system. When I'm able to do that, that really gives me a sense of fulfillment because it deepens the authenticity of it, but it also feels like there's more of a connection. And the other way that I was able to architect and action my day was the permission for rest. I didn't have to have the perfect house. I didn't have to have it all together. And for me to be able to rest with my baby and my dog, oh, pure bliss. And that gave me a sense of fulfillment because I was able to replenish my energy stores. And then I'd feel like I'd have more space and capacity for playing.
Let's just take a moment to chill. Parenting is tricky, and consciously choosing to grow, let's just say it can be rough and tough and messy. If you're doing any of these things, or if you're doing all of them at once, your plate is full, your brain is overloaded, your tabs are open, and bandwidth feels like a distant memory of the past. I just want you to know that it's totally healthy to feel like this, and that there's another way. A way to feel more calm, confident, and connected. Yep, and let's just throw in a little contentment too. And it all starts with your nervous system. Let's get you out of the overwhelm and into a space where life actually feels chill. This is why I created the Chill Out program, a self-paced course where you get to learn all about your nervous system, how it works, how to map your patterns, and how to regulate using real-life tools and suggestions that fit you and your world. We explore polyvagal theory, nervous system mapping, and build your personal toolkit, just so that you can come back to center again and again. Because this is how you find your calm amongst the chaos. Not by doing more, not by adding to it, but by feeling safe enough just to be. The link's in the show notes, go check it out. Your nervous system will thank you. And now let's get back to it.
So I wasn't fixing my postnatal depression in inverted commas. I was healing my relationship to myself, which then gave me a greater sense of fulfillment, which then enabled me to feel more connected, which then symptomatically dissipated and dissolved that feeling of postnatally depressed motherhood. So I really invite you to check in with yourself, even now, as you're driving, as you're listening to this. What are your values in this season? How are they being fueled? Sometimes in a chaotic season, all you want is peace. And that's okay. That's how your values actually evolve when you start to identify and work with them. Other values could be connection, it could be humor, it could be growth, it could be health, it could be creativity. What is it in this current season of yours that you're feeling is very important to you? So what I would do is I would write them down and then just pick one and just find a way that you can honor that value today. How are you going to nurture, love that value? How are you going to give it and water it? Whatever it is. It's that tiny little shift that you'll feel this sense of peace and fulfillment and happiness and joy that is healing your relationship to yourself. And then once you start healing your relationship to yourself, you start healing your relationship to your world, to your people, to your everything external. The things don't have to be fixed. They need to be held gently. They need to be given love. They need to be given space. And they need to be reconnected. So with that little nugget of knowing, that is also building your self-confidence. That is how you start to get clear on what it is you're going to do in the world, how you're going to attend your child, and how you parent changes day to day because they grow and develop. How I parent my son now is totally different to 10 years ago because he's grown, he's developing, and I get to move with it. And those values really shape the way I parent it really shapes the way I speak to him, the language I use, and it also shapes the way I show up for him. And those moments when they're having a meltdown, you feel triggered because I bring those values to mind, but not in a like an articulate, oh, what are my values? Oh, he's having a meltdown. What are my values? I need to fuel that. No, no, no. It's because I work with my values in a way that's everywhere within my work. It's with my dad, it's with my friends, it's with myself. So having that freedom, fulfillment, and connection with myself as well, that enables me to show up in those emotional meltdown times with my son with those three values because it's something that I'm building capacity for. And I'm so grateful for my therapist to be able to join the dots all the way 10 years ago because it builds capacity for other things. I know when my values aren't being met. I know when a situation isn't serving my values anymore. And it's a decision time. Do I continue on or do I close the door and walk away? I've done this multiple times over the years. I've done it with businesses, I've done it with partners. And it's not saying the other thing is wrong, it's just not serving my values anymore. And that means if I was to stay, I would be very unfulfilled. And when you're unfulfilled in doing the things, you become resentful. You become like this person that you can't connect with anymore because you're not serving who you naturally are. So, on that note, that was a very deep podcast, wasn't it? Be kind to yourself. This motherhood journey and everything that we've explored in this postnatal depression series is about holding space and leaning into the discomfort with compassion and grace and vulnerability. It's starting to know yourself and identify the things in you that really deserve to be watered, fed, and nurtured so you can bring them out in the world. And those values, if we had those values being loud and proud in people, like their own unique values, imagine what the world would look like. How people would show up to their job, how people show up as teachers, as mothers, as the postie, as doctors, as partners, as friends. If you have that awareness and that you're able to integrate it in a way that is your own unique truth, that's your medicine to the world and that's your medicine to your children. And it's also your medicine to yourself. Because life can be hard. Life is hard. Things happen. And how do you recover from that? How do you navigate that? And you've got this little person now looking at you, absorbing everything. How would you want to see them show up in adversity, in challenged times? It's with a confidence, it's with like an inner strength and compassion, not to fight, not to win, but to heal, to grow, to expand, and to be vulnerable that they can help others as well, and to feel safe to be able to do that. And that's what this journey really is. This motherhood journey is so, so sacred because you're not just raising another human being, you're gifting the world in the next 50, 60, 80 years and then some because it passes on to their children. So it really is a legacy that you get to put your flavor to. And what flavor is that going to be? And those flavors is the values. It's how you enact and how you embody it. Anyway, there you go. If this episode landed for you and it spoke to you in some way, please share it with other mamas out there. All of us, every single one of us, are doing our best with our level of awareness. And if we can increase that awareness, that personal awareness, and we get to go deeper and deeper, then it's just more tools that we get to access. And this motherhood journey becomes such a sacred part of our humanness. And yeah, I hope this has helped. I hope that You find some solace in this and some direction if you're completely lost. You find that, there's at least a little bit of a roadmap to this. If you're interested, I have programs online that are self-paced. The 14-day challenge has those values in it. So you get to build that muscle of not just self-trust, but that muscle of self-healing and self-compassion. All right, on that note, I'm out of here. Stay calm, curious, and connected, and I will chat to you soon.